right. Welcome everybody to the October 19th onX Hunt 101 Masterclass. My name's Jack. I'm going to be taking you through our little spiel here. I'm joined by Connor, one of our esteemed customer support agents. We also have folks, it's Eli. He's in the background answering questions for you. So we're going to wait for a few more people to filter in, let everybody get situated. While we're waiting, just some housekeeping items. Your audio and video are turned off, so no need to worry if you got noise in the background. We can't see you, we can't hear you. If you do have a question, please put it in the Q&A box along the bottom of your screen. It's just easier for us to go through those than if they get thrown in the regular chat box. Chat box, things get lost really easy. Chat is more for if you just want to chat with other folks in the class or just chime in and say, hey, you know, it's Bob from Tennessee or Jill from Washington or wherever you're at. That's all good for the chat there. And as far as questions go, we are a bit limited as far as issues we can troubleshoot in a class format like this. So if you have questions pertaining to like your billing, your password, things like that, where we'd have to go into like your account on the back end here, best to send those to help@onxmaps.com. Our team's able to better take a look at those kinds of issues that way versus posting them here is a little bit tougher to take a look at. We are going to be doing a giveaway at the end of the class. We're giving away some of our new Blaze Orange onX hats since upland seasons are opening up and rifle season here in Montana opens this weekend. So we'll give away some of those. And finally, this class is being recorded. People always ask us that. We record all of these. You'll get sent an email tomorrow with the recording link. We will also get it uploaded to the onX Hunt YouTube channel. That's where just about all of our old classes get loaded up to YouTube. So if you ever want to watch an old class or go back and review some material, check out the onX Hunt YouTube channel. That's a good place to check all those out. Any housekeeping stuff I'm forgetting?
I think we should be good.
Sweet. Let me advance my slide here. So here's kind of the agenda for the night. We do kind of bounce around a little bit, but this is what we're going to be covering. This is a 101 class. So we're going to be covering it as kind of an introductory level. So if you've never used the app before, if you're relatively new, this is perfect for you. We aren't going to be able to get super in-depth on some of the more advanced features just because this class is already probably going to be an hour and a half. And my voice will probably give out by the end of that. But what we are covering are the different membership options, the differences between them, how to find your location and use the compass in the app. We're going to talk map layers, offline maps, your different map tools like your tracker, like your waypoints, like your trail cameras. We're going to talk about some of our different base maps, some of our different imagery options, how to perform a search. And then we'll save some time at the end for some Q&A. We did collect some questions that people sent in beforehand, and then we'll post that giveaway link towards the end of the class there. So I am going to just stop sharing here for a second so that I can switch over to my tablet. One moment to get that set up. So what I'm pulling up here, you'll see it in a second, is the onX Hunt app on my mobile device. So there, if it'll let me get out of Zoom, there's a bit of a lag. So when you download the onX Hunt app onto your device, and when you log in with your email and password, you should see a map that looks somewhat like this. This is Western Montana. You can see my blue dot in the center of the map, sitting here in Missoula. If you were to pull up the map and you're not seeing your blue dot, so if I move it over and I'm looking at a map and there's no blue dot on it at all, the easiest way to find your location is just tap in the lower right-hand corner, tap the button that looks kind of like a crosshair or like a wagon wheel. You just see in the lower right-hand corner of the screen that lit up blue. And my blue dot is now in the center of the screen. So that's how you're able to orient the map to your location. The map doesn't always open up to where you're standing. That's a question we get sometimes is how do I get the map to just pull up my location automatically? We're not able to do that for various, like there's some privacy laws and stuff that go into effect there where we can't automatically ping your location. You have to kind of give the app permission to pull that. So you have to hit that button, and that pulls it up there for you. If you tap that button and it says something like location services not enabled or permissions needed, something along those lines, you do have to grant the onX Hunt app permission in your phone or tablet settings to access your location. If you deny that, that's fine, but then just know you're not going to be able to see your location on the map. And in my opinion, that's kind of the whole point of the app, is to know where you stand, as our tagline says. So that's how you can pull up your location. If I tap the button one more time, you see that the map changed a little bit. It's spun around. The icon in the lower right-hand corner turns into, looks kind of like an arrow or a triangle. And then I've got this, looks kind of like a flashlight coming off the front of my circle. Now that flashlight, or sight cone as we call it, is pointed in the direction that my device is facing. So if I get out of this again, I'll show you one more time what that looks like. I just tap my location button in the lower right-hand corner. Now, as I move my tablet, you can see it start to move on the screen there. And it looks a little jumpy. It's because of the lag from Zoom. If you can see my tablet here, it's just smoothly swinging back and forth. So this is useful for when you're walking down a trail. You want to see what's ahead of you. Maybe if you're riding in a vehicle, always be safe. If you're driving, of course, don't be driving and staring at your phone. But if you're riding in a vehicle, in a boat or something like that, and you want to see what's coming up, great way to do that, so that instead of it being north oriented up all the time, whatever direction you're traveling is oriented up, so you can see what's on your right, see what's on your left there. Anything I'm missing on that?
I think it should be good.
Awesome. Now you notice when I go into this kind of heads up mode, for lack of a better term, another icon appeared in the lower right-hand corner. It looks like a compass. If I tap that, it puts you into our compass mode. Now this is fairly new. If you've had onX in previous years, you probably didn't see this. This is brand new. I think this spring we launched it, the spring or summer. So this does a couple things, solves a couple of problems. You see, as I move my screen along the top there, it's kind of like a compass bearing. So you can get kind of a rudimentary, if you're looking for degrees of travel or degrees, of north. I guess it's been a long time since I took an orienteering course.
Yeah.
Put red in the shed, I remember that. So you can get that. That's a question people have asked us. What's really cool, though, in my opinion, kind of the meat and potatoes of this feature. Eli's laughing in the background, and he's making me want to laugh right now. So thanks a lot. Anyway, little peek at how the sausage is made there. If you go to that rangefinder tool in the lower right-hand corner, I just tapped on that. You see it turned red. Now my compass, or my, I guess, grid here has turned red, and there's a dot in the center. It might be a little tough to see, but if you look close, I'm just dragging this up and down, and you can see the yardage displayed on the left there is following that and is moving it. I can drag it all the way up to the top, and I can go out miles if I want. I can drag it to the bottom and come in close. So that's automatically zooming for me as I just drag that indicator up and down. So what this is cool for is, let's say that I'm out hunting, it's deer opener this weekend. I see a deer I want to shoot. I've got my handheld rangefinder and I range it, and it's 340 yards. Okay, I'm comfortable shooting that far. I'll point my phone at it. So different with a tablet here, but I'll point my phone at it. I'll put it out to 340 yards, boom. So that when I shoot that deer, and hopefully I hit it and I make a good, ethical, clean hit on it, I can then place a waypoint right on that spot where it was standing, or very close to it, so that I have a spot now where, obviously I'm sitting in the middle of Missoula here. It's a cityscape. When I'm out in the mountains, when you climb down into that creek bottom or you start walking, things start looking different. In a couple of weeks when I'm sitting in Minnesota in a tree stand and climb down, and there's hazel brush and all kinds of stuff over my head, it's tough to see exactly where you're going sometimes. So now I have a waypoint, I have a spot to start blood tracking. Another use for this is, let's say you don't have a rangefinder, or your rangefinder, mine's 6-7 years old. It's still a good rangefinder, but it doesn't really range as far as some of the newer ones do. Let's say, I'm just going to move this. I'm going to close out of this for now. And I'm just going to move my map over here so we get a clean screen. Let's say I can spot an animal in a park, timbered area in western Montana, and there's one little grassy area. Maybe there's an elk feeding in there, and my rangefinder is just not able to pick it up. Maybe it's raining a little bit, whatever, right? Maybe I forgot to replace the batteries. That's happened to me before. But I can range this out and say, just pretend here. Of course, obviously we're in the city, but I could put that spot on that park or on a rock formation or on some landscape and get an idea of, all right, that's 706 yards away. I'm personally not going to shoot that far. If you're practiced enough and you have the equipment, more power to you. But at least I know, hey, that's 706 yards. I need to knock off at least 3, and then I know how close I need to get. I can also place a waypoint there. And let's say I'm archery hunting. I gotta get real close. I want to get to 40 yards, let's say. Now, again, I have that waypoint where if I need to take a more circuitous route to get there, if I need to keep the wind factored, whatever it is, I at least have a landmark on my map where I can say, this is where the elk was last time we saw it. I have a waypoint, I have a landmark there. So there's other uses for that. I'm sure I forgot something, but those are the two that immediately come to my mind.
Yeah. The only thing I'd add to that, along the left side of the screen, you will see there are yardage increments there as well.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not trying to drop a waypoint, but you're just trying to get a rough estimate, you can always use those with that line in the center to be able to tell what those distances are. And those are going to change with the zoom level. So as you zoom in and out, it's going to keep that same sizing on the screen, but those yardages will change to be appropriate to whatever zoom level you're at.
Yeah. So I'm going to exit out of that, get us back to square one here. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of how to find your location, how to use that compass mode. There's going to be more improvements made to that compass mode. Can't say a whole lot, but we got some cool stuff coming down the pipeline. I think folks are going to like. So right above my location button there, if I just tap that one more time to orient north up, right above the location button is your base map button. So that is how you can change what that base map of the map looks like. So I'm going to just move over to more of a forested area so that you can kind of get a good sense of what this looks like. I have hybrid selected as my base map right now, and that's really what I use 90% of the time, especially when I'm out in the field. It's almost 100% of the time. I use the hybrid base map. And what hybrid gives you is the satellite imagery that you see here. If I zoom around, you can see, there's some rocks here and trees and that stuff that we're used to. But it also gives me the topographic lines so that I can see the slope of the hill. I can see how steep it is. I can see the elevation. I can pinpoint some of those saddles and ridges and things like that. If I go to satellite, which I do use sometimes, if I really just want a clear look of the ground, that's what that looks like. When I go up to northern Minnesota, where my family's had a deer camp, I think one time I measured the distance between topographic lines, meaning like a 20-foot elevation change. It was like 1.5 miles. Topographic lines don't do me a whole lot of good there where it's, dead flat. So then I just use the satellite when I'm there. I'll flip it over to topo if I'm looking for a specific like slope aspect or a specific terrain feature. If I'm really trying to pinpoint, say a north facing slope for elk bedding, I can see kind of right here in the middle. Not that this is necessarily great elk bedding. It looks a little bit steep, but I know that this is a north facing slope right here. I can see, watch those lines go down. In the spring, when I'm looking for bears, that's when I use topo probably the most. When I'm scouting for bear hunting spots and I'm looking for those south facing slopes, I'll go through my topo map. I'll try to find some south facing slopes maybe some south or southwestish facing basins. I'll mark a bunch of waypoints on them. Like, let's just say, oh, this looks like a decent spot. I'm gonna put a waypoint there. And then when I'm done, I go back and I go into hybrid mode so that I can take a look at it and see, it's pretty heavily timbered. The spot that's not timber looks like it's all rocks, which might not be bad. I've watched bears flip rocks over looking for grubs and bugs, but this is probably a spot I'm not gonna go to. There's not a lot of green, grassy looking hillsides for those spring bears. But that's kind of my process for when I use some of those different maps. Any other different way anything different you use?
That's pretty much how I use it. I like to flip to the topo strictly if I'm going to like look at a higher zoom level. I feel like it just makes the topographic lines pop a little bit more, but most of the time I'm living in hybrid too.
Yeah. You'll also notice below your base map selector there, we have a couple different imagery options. So what I'm going to do, where's a good spot here? I'm just going to go South Dakota. I'm going to South Dakota in a couple weeks to go pheasant hunting. I'm not really hot spotting South Dakota as a state. Everyone knows that's the pheasant capital. Here's an area I've never been, but I've been looking at the recent imagery on my map for the area that we're pheasant hunting to try to get a handle on the crops right now. Are they pulling corn out? I know they were harvesting corn. They got a bunch of rain, so that's kind of slowed down the harvest there. Next week, hopefully a bunch of corn is harvested because pheasants can sure hide in a cornfield. And it's even if the corn's on public, that's not fun hunting when I'm 6'3" and it's well over my head. Not fun going through there. But when I tap on that recent imagery switch, you can see the map changed. So here's our regular imagery. Here's the recent imagery. As I move around, you can kind of see easily which fields are irrigated, which aren't, which fields might be harvested, which ones are still green, meaning, this time of year, if they're still green, it's probably not corn or soybeans. It's probably alfalfa or rangeland or something like that. And go ahead.
Sorry, good thing to chime in here too, because some of you may not be seeing those options if you're following along. Our recent imagery and our leaf off imagery are going to be for elite only. So if you have a premium membership, those aren't supposed to be showing up there. If you're interested in them, definitely reach out to us. We can hook you up with a trial and check them out and then maybe get you upgraded as well.
Yeah, good point. So these are elite only features. So if you have a basic membership, a trial, a premium, those aren't going to be showing for you. You do have to upgrade to the elite membership. I think this is one of the features that really makes that elite membership worth it. What's relatively new here as well, if you've been checking out the recent imagery, you might not have noticed in the lower left-hand corner, we have the dates there. So that's the date that imagery was taken. And there's also arrows, so you can go back in time. So if I tap, I'm going back 2 weeks. I tap again, I'm going back 2 weeks. And we'll go all the way back. You can go back to, I think it's late March or early April was when we launched this feature. So you can see what it looked like here, end of August. Quite a bit different than October, right? So this is what I think is really cool is every time we add 2 weeks, this look back gets longer. So you can imagine next year, you can look at an area in October of 2024 and then go back to 2023. And that's just going to keep getting longer and longer. So assuming I'm going to keep pheasant hunting the same areas, I'm going to be able to go back and be like, all right, what did this area look like last year? All right, how's it different this year? How are things the same? Oh man, we didn't find pheasants in this area. They were here, all over last year. It's like, oh yeah, the corn was harvested last year. This year it's not, or different things were planted, or more or less water, whatever. You can kind of get the idea there of what that imagery. Once the snow starts flying, if you're traveling to hunt, it might be useful to know where the snow line is in the mountains. If you're a waterfowl hunter, hey, maybe if I'm traveling to go hunt, are all water holes frozen up? Is it just a river hunt now because those stay open? That's kind of how it is in Western Montana here in December. You pretty much got to find flowing water or everything's going to be frozen up. So a lot of different uses for it. Checking crops, checking harvest, checking water levels, checking snow levels. What else am I forgetting?
That's pretty much it, mostly what I've been using it for.
Yeah,
There's one other thing I'd add to that if you want to switch it back on quick.
yep,
This imagery isn't intended to replace our base imagery.
yes.
If you zoom in, it is blurrier than what we traditionally have.
Yep,
The speed that they're taking it, it can't be that same really high quality resolution. So I'd still use the normal imagery for your like day-to-day use, but when you are trying to check those ground conditions, that's a good time to be switching it on and looking at kind of like a higher zoom level of a bigger area.
yeah, good point. It's not intended to be the only imagery you use. It's intended to work in conjunction with our standard regular imagery there. It's just another piece of information to help you out. And then our second new imagery option we released, let me get over to Wisconsin here. Let's find a spot that's got some trees. So we have leaf off imagery. That's brand new this year. Brand new within last couple weeks,
Yeah,
last
just
month or two.
Week or two, I think.
So this is an elite only feature. So if you have the elite membership, you have access to this. But we have 13 states right now. We have plans to add more. Some of that is due to availability of imagery. States that have this imagery available, not everyone does. All 13 right now are east of the Mississippi, I believe. Do we have Kansas?
I don't believe we do yet.
Okay, I thought I saw Kansas in there at one point. But we're prioritizing the states with more tree cover. So this is Wisconsin, we got New Hampshire, we have North Carolina, Virginia. I don't want to misspeak and say something that we don't have. But anyway, this is Wisconsin here. So you can kind of, not a huge difference in this example, because it looks like the imagery was already kind of taken in the fall, our regular imagery. But that's something that you can turn on. Let me find a greener area here. This might look better. There we go. So you can really see the difference there. That's a better example. So that's something people have reached out to us and said, man, I wish we had imagery where there weren't leaves so that I can look down and see, where ATV trails are going through the woods, or sometimes you can even zoom in and try to pinpoint deer trails. It's a little tough. The resolution is not quite enough in a lot of areas to see deer trails, but you can certainly tell very easily where the evergreen trees, where the coniferous trees are, and where the deciduous trees are. So, obviously there's a stand of pines or spruce or something here. Looks like maybe pines. Anyway, so that's leaf off imagery. Like we said, 13 states right now. If you have this button on your map and you turn it on for your state and your state doesn't have leaf off imagery, you should get something like we have in Montana here. Let's let that load up. It'll say no leaf off imagery available. So if you're seeing that, we don't have it for your state yet. Hopefully we can get that soon. All right. I feel like we've beaten that dead horse. Why is this taking forever to load? Did it kick me off of Wi-Fi? It looks like it might have. So my tablet got booted off the office Wi-Fi. Slowly loading up. Anyway, let's say we talk about map layers.
Yeah.
Sweet. I'm going to stop sharing on my iPad here because it's acting up. So I'm going to go over to the onX web map. So this is something that comes with every membership. Everybody has access to it. All you have to do to access onX on your computer is go to www.onxmaps.com. You should see something that looks like this. And our picture may be covering it on your screen, but in the upper right-hand corner, there's a button that says Open Map. And then you click Hunt Map. Mine, since I was logged in already, automatically logged me in. For you, it's going to ask for your email address and your password. You have to use the same email address and password that you used to set up your account. So if you set everything up on your phone, even if you use multiple different email addresses, has to be the same one every time you log into your onX account. Doesn't matter the device.
Yep. And if you're not sure what email you used on the app, there's a menu in the top left-hand corner. If you click there, it'll list your email address at the top.
Yep. So should look familiar. This is the same map we were just looking at on my tablet. If you're following along and you're not on a computer and you're on your tablet, we're going to go into the map layers menu right now. On a phone or tablet, it's in the lower left-hand corner. On the web map on a computer, it's right here, kind of top left. It says hunt map layers. I tap that and open it up. And I'm going to be given a bunch of different folders, or you can call them collections here. The first thing that'll be listed will be your state or Canada, if you have Canada turned on. And then you'll have these different collections, current conditions, land and access, road trails and trees, crops, cover, wildlife layers. If you don't see any states or Canada listed here, you just need to turn them on by scrolling down, and that's where they'll all be listed. So at the top, if I just turn all them off, you can see I have nothing listed up here for a state. All of these switches are gray. So I'm in Montana. I'm gonna scroll down, I'm gonna click this switch.
Layout on this is identical on the phone too, so you just scroll down to catch those other states. If you
Yep.
need them.
Montana gets moved to the top, and then here it is up here. So if I open up my Montana folder, we have 8 different layers for the state of Montana. Your state might have more or less. I don't know what state has the most.
There's at least one that's got 10, but I
I
can't
want
remember
to say
which.
Colorado's got a few.
North
Yeah.
Dakota.
North Dakota's got quite a few. North Dakota
Wisconsin
does.
as well.
Wisconsin as well. Yep. So it's going to vary depending on your state, sometimes depending on different programs that state has, like different walk-in access programs, or just different data that they have available. For example, in Pennsylvania and Minnesota, we're able to get some logging data from the state on like state and county and sometimes even private lands. So in Minnesota, I think it's called like the forest disturbance layer. That's unique to Minnesota because the Minnesota DNR has that data, makes it available to us. We're able to pull it in there. So if your state has a cool program or some data that you think would be useful, definitely let us know. If it's out there, if it's publicly available, if it's something that's going to help hunters, we'll try to grab it and upload it and get it included in the map there. So if you're looking at your state and you're like, hey, I don't have all those same layers that you have in Montana, that's fine. Nothing's broken. Every state just has different programs and different layers. The things that every state will have, though, are a private lands layer, a government lands layer, and a possible access layer. Most states will have some form of a hunting districts layer, whether it's called hunting districts like in Montana, whether it's GMUs, whether it's hunting areas, whether it's deer management zones, deer permit areas, waterfowl areas. They're going to be different. But that's one. I think Illinois is the only state that doesn't.
I believe so.
So Illinois doesn't because like for their deer hunts, they do everything kind of based on the county. Most states don't do that. So we've got those. If I zoom my map out, those hunting districts are these green lines you see on the map here. We sometimes get that question like, man, what are these green borders? Why is it all green? That's your hunting districts. If you don't need that, if you're somebody who's like, man, I just hunt grouse or I just hunt pheasants and there's nothing applicable, you can turn that off. All these layers can be turned on and off at any time. I keep these 3 on all the time. Private lands, government lands. If I turn off my government lands layer, I'll give you an idea of what that looks like. So the government lands on your map are all going to be color coded. So National Forest, if I click on this, it tells me Lolo National Forest. That's going to be that green color. State lands are going to be more of a blue color. And if you see the name pops up, says state of Montana. And this is a good time to mention, if you ever are wondering what something on the map is, now, I'm not necessarily talking about like the imagery, if you find something on the imagery, but any of our map layers, any of the data onX puts on there, if you want to learn more about it, just click on it or tap on it on your phone. So here's a piece of state. You know, I click on it, tells me state of Montana is the owner, Missoula County. Doesn't give me a whole lot more information than that. If I want to learn more about a private parcel, I can click on it and it tells me this is owned by Wild Country Enterprises LLC. I get their tax address. I get the acreage, I get a little bit of information about them. We often get that question, do we have phone numbers in the app? We do not include phone numbers, mostly out of respect for landowners, just because a lot of landowners, a lot of ranchers and farmers are already getting a lot of phone calls and a lot of people contacting them for hunting permission, especially, this time of year, if it's harvest, they don't really have time to deal with all of that. You can imagine if you were getting 100 phone calls a day, you might not appreciate it too much. So that's why part of the reason why we don't have the phone numbers in there. We give you the tax address if you want to send a letter to somebody. If you want to, knock on the door, you might have a name, not if it's in an LLC, of course, you don't necessarily know the person's first name. And you could try to do an internet search, look in the white pages, try to find a phone number that way. If you want to ask for permission or something like that. So those are two of the most important layers, I think, the government lands and the private lands. I have those turned on all the time. Hunting districts, I want to circle back to that real quick, because especially this time of year and application season in the spring, when people in, predominantly Western states are applying for tags, we get questions. Wyoming seems to be the big culprit of, man, your map doesn't look like Wyoming Game and Fish does. The numbers are different, the boundaries are different. What's going on there is a lot of states break up their hunting units by species. So in Montana, we have, I should count these up sometime, like 15, 12 different units. So if I zoom out a little bit so you can get a good picture of this, these are our deer, elk, lion units. This is what's turned on by default. Most states will default to deer units if they have them, or some states don't have deer, they just have like big game units. It'll default to that. We tried to pick kind of the most commonly used unit for a state. If I'm going to go pronghorn hunting, Montana for some reason calls them antelope. That bugs me. They're pronghorn. I can just switch that layer on and you can see the numbers change. If I switch back, you can see the differences there, right? If I go to bighorn sheep, bison, black bear, they all change. So whatever you're hunting, make sure you have the proper unit selected. Wyoming, like I said, is the culprit. A lot of people like to hunt pronghorn antelope there. I'll just use both names to make everybody happy. I'm sorry, Eli, if I angered some people in the comments there. But Wyoming's pronghorn capital, of the country, highest population. A lot of people go there to hunt. Select the antelope one. If you're hunting deer, go to deer, right? Pretty simple there. Couple other layers, possible access I turn on. Now, these are private lands that may allow public access. In the West, a lot of them are timber company lands. You might have some land trusts. You might have groups like the Nature Conservancy that own some land. So if we take a timber company, for example, Weyerhaeuser, I still think is the dominant timber company across large swaths of the West and the South. They own a lot of land. A lot of times they will allow public access, be it just for going for a hike or bird watching, be it for hunting, fishing, camping, whatever. So it's not listed in the government lands layer because it's not public land, it's private. But like out here, I hunt a lot of Nature Conservancy land because they're kind enough to open it up and let people hunt and fish and recreate on it. They do have special rules that may differ from adjacent government lands. So you do want to make sure that you check with the landowner. Maybe they have an agreement, like in Montana, a lot of times they'll have an agreement with FWP to kind of have administration or, I guess law enforcement on some of these parcels. Let me see. I think there's a parcel down here. Here's some to show you what this looks like. So you can kind of see it. There's this green diagonal lines that go through here. This is Five Valleys Land Trust. So it's a local land trust here that owns this land, and they generally allow people to hike and mountain bike and whatnot on it. If I click on it, it tells me that private land ownership information. It tells me the district I'm in, gives me a little bit of information. So that's a layer. It is incumbent on you to make sure you're doing your homework and you know what is and is not allowed on these lands. But it's us kind of giving you some information and saying, hey, this is an area that might allow public access. might want to go check it out, check the Weyerhaeuser website, check the Nature Conservancy, what have you. Going back into our layers, I'll wrap up Montana here in a bit. We've got the block management layer in your state. If you have a public access to private lands program, typically we call these like walk-in areas. In Montana, they're called block management areas. In North Dakota, they're plots, private land open to sportsmen. Kansas is WEHA, walk-in hunting access. There's access, yes, in Idaho. I think Wyoming calls it that as well. Every state calls it something different. Sometimes it's just walk-in areas, walk-in hunting areas. Let me pull one up here. On the map, they're going to be, again, it's private lands. They're going to have red dots covering the parcel with a black border around them. So that's showing you the locations of those areas that allow hunting access. In Montana, we have a couple different types of block management areas. We have type 1 and type 2, and that just, the difference is how you gain permission. Type 2, a lot of times you have to call ahead or you have to meet at the ranch house to get permission from the landowner, the ranch manager, or something. Type 1 typically is just a sign-in box. You pull up, you write down some of your information, and you take a card. Half stays with you, and that's your permission slip. Another half goes in the box so that they can tell how many people are going in every day. If you want to learn more, again, you can click on it. It's going to tell you the information for that area.
Yeah, clicking on those links there after you click on the property, the more info is going to take you to documents with the state or whatever agency is managing that program and actually give you the information about what to expect there.
Yep.
So for like this one, this is actually a spot I hunt ducks on quite often.
Dude.
Yeah, there's one piece of water on it. I'm not too worried.
Yep.
But they're going to list what you're able to hunt there because it does vary by area. There are special restrictions and
Yep.
then like parking, things like that. And just make sure you read through all of that prior to going out there, just so you are following any of the rules that might be associated with that land that aren't typically associated with like government owned land.
Yep, and again, it's going to vary by state. Montana, this is one of the oldest walk-in programs in the country. I think we have the most acres of any state in the country. It helps being the 4th largest state, of course. So you might click on it and it might not have these links. It's just because your state agency doesn't have that like type of website like Montana has set up. So again, might look a little different on your end, depending what state you're in. Anything else state-wise that I'm forgetting?
Just that you might see some different layers that aren't going to be relevant to everyone, like the game bird project or the game distribution. These aren't layers you'd normally have turned on, but if they're relevant to whatever you're looking for, if you are looking for like research purposes, definitely check them out. Worst case, if you turn a layer on and it's not what you're looking for, you can just toggle it back off and move on to the next one.
Yep. And that's a recommendation I have for people. If you don't know what something is, turn it on and take a look at it, right? You can't break anything. Oftentimes we talk to people, they're like, oh man, I'm just afraid of pushing the wrong button. I don't want to screw anything up. You can't really screw anything up on this. Anything you do, anything you put on the map can be taken off, and vice versa. So check stuff out. If it's not useful, like I don't use the Montana game distribution layer all that often. But if that's something that's interesting to you, you can turn it on and take a look at it. If I'm an elite member, I get access to all 50 states and Canada. So you see, I currently have Montana turned on. This question we get sometimes is, I thought I paid for all 50 states. Why can't I turn them all on? You don't want them all turned on at one time. It can kind of slow the map down. It's just loading a lot more information. But if I want to turn on, I mentioned I'm going to South Dakota in about just over a week now. It's getting close. I can just go in, turn on South Dakota, and you can see it listed up here for me. I'm going to turn on, the walk-ins layer, some of the different stuff that I need. When I want to remove South Dakota, I can just go in and hit remove state, or I could scroll down here and hit this button to turn it off. Dealer's choice on that. So that's how, as an elite member, how you can turn on multiple states, how you can turn on Canada if you need it.
And typically like 5 or 6 states at a time, you should be fine. If you see your phone starting to slow down and you've got a couple more turned on than that, it might be good to just toggle off the ones you don't need quite yet.
Yeah.
You can turn them on and off at any time, so there's no worry about not having them on.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time you're just hunting one state at a time. I know there are times where you might be on the border of Montana and Idaho or the border of North and South Dakota or something. Having 2 on's not an issue. I don't really see the need, at least in the field, to have more than 2 on at a time. I guess unless you're hunting the Four Corners region of the Southwest, but the odds that you have tags in all 4 of those states, I guess you could bird hunt it. But
Would be interesting.
trying tags in Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona.
Ooh.
Probably as lucky as winning the Powerball or something.
I have a lotto ticket if you have that.
So moving down to some of our nationwide layers here. Now, these are layers that everybody has access to with a paid membership. So whether you're premium 2 state, elite, you have access to these. And they are, like I said, nationwide layers. The first one here, one that I almost always have turned on, is this active wildfire layer. If I zoom out here, you'll start to see, it might be tough to see on your screen a bit, but these little red icons are all showing fires. Now, if we go back a month where fire season was a little bit more active, there'd be a lot more of these on the map. I bet you Canada still has a bunch.
California should.
Maybe not. California. Yeah, Northern California, a bunch here. So if I zoom in on some of these fires, you can see a boundary starts showing, and that's going to show you the perimeter of that fire as it currently stands. Sometimes you'll see a fire with no perimeter. We do also show like controlled burns on there. So a lot of times I see a lot in the spring. It seems like they do a lot of controlled burns around here. Well, they'll have a fire and they'll have the icon. There won't be a whole lot of information. It doesn't have the perimeter. That's because, you know, maybe the Forest Service, for example, is doing a controlled burn. It's not a wildfire. It's just a fire. So things might look different. But by and large, this is what you're going to find, something like this. You were going to say something?
I was just going to say, if you do see like prescribed or controlled burns, at least on Forest Service land, they often start the name of those with RX, since it is a prescribed burn.
Yeah.
It just kind of helps identify those, since they usually aren't watching the boundaries for them at all or anything like that.
Right. So like everything on the map, if I want to learn more information, I can click on this fire and it's going to tell me the name of the fire. It's going to tell us when our source last updated. So our information can only be as up to date as the managing agency, the responding agency, and the data that they put out. So they last updated this perimeter and this fire data on October 13th, okay, last week. We checked it today. We check multiple times a day. I always forget. It's either like 4 or 6 times a day. It's every 4 hours or every 6 hours. We check the data to see if anything has changed. So you can be sure the data we have in the app is the most up-to-date data that's available. Of course, this fire could have changed quite a bit in a week. Once they update this, once the managing agency, it looks like this is the Forest Service. Once they update that, we're able to show that on the map here. Things I'm forgetting about active wildfires.
Oh, that's pretty much it.
Awesome. So once a fire is put out, it will eventually get put into our historic wildfire layer. I'll show you that in a little bit. So stay tuned for that. We'll get to that in a couple minutes here. Some other current conditions layers. Honestly, I don't often turn these on hardly at all. I use some of them like the drought data sometimes for scouting, or if I'm applying for tags, especially in the Southwest. Like I apply for tags in a lot of the Western states. If I'm applying in Utah, for example, I might want to apply for an elk tag in an area that had more rainfall, because that's going to help antler growth. If I'm looking for one of those big giant bulls they have in Utah, and in 30 years when I have enough points to draw a tag, that'll be pretty sweet. So you can turn that on, and it kind of gives you this big, it helps if you zoom out, and I'll tell you how dry things are. Abnormally dry, moderate drought, all that stuff. It is good to see a lot of this area not showing up at all, meaning we got some moisture this year, which is kind of cool.
in the current conditions.
Oh,
Yeah, just
Gotta
like
ask
get
it-
into the map layers. And
got asked how to get, there was a question on how to turn these layers on. So on my computer, it's this button up here, hunt map layers. On your phone or tablets in the lower left-hand corner. I have my different collections here. And I clicked on current conditions. That's how I was able to turn that on. So that's a question we get fairly often. People say, hey, I'm looking in Montana, I don't see the drought data. It's because it's not in Montana because it's a nationwide layer. That's why it's in that other folder. So we sometimes hear that for, well, a lot of our layers really. If you're not seeing it in your state folder, check those other folders. It'll be in one of those.
One thing to touch on here, and we'll circle back on this too, but especially like that drought data is a really good example of it. If you're ever looking at your map and there's colored shading that you don't know what's going on, or it's not looking quite right
Like
for
say
the imagery,
something like this.
it's more than likely layers that are turned on.
Mhm.
There's quite a few of them like this that really hide our imagery. So if you ever run into that, go back into those menus and start switching things off until you see that that disappears.
Yeah.
And that'll kind of give you an idea of what layer might actually be affecting your map.
This is one of the biggest culprits, at least it has been historically, the precipitation radar. So it's like your Doppler radar, you know, on your local news channel or something. That again is one I will sometimes turn on, but then I turn it right off just so it's not blocking my map up. Moving on to our next collection, land and access. I'm gonna get the map back to Montana here. Again, some of these I turn on quite often, some of these I never use. Wilderness areas, I always have turned on. What that looks like, you can see I get up to the Scapegoat, the Bob Marshall Wilderness here in western Montana, and it's got this kind of grayish hash mark over it, letting you know where that federally designated wilderness is. So if you're wondering where those are located, turn on the wilderness areas. You know, those are non-motorized, no bikes, no equipment like that in those areas. Another one that I turn on is this U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service hunt areas. I'm going to zoom in. There's a refuge here. And this is what it looks like without the hunt areas layer turned on. So if your government lands layer is turned on, these will show up because it's government land. Once I turn on the hunt areas though, it tells me the different units within the refuge. So a lot of refuges allow hunting, allow fishing, not all, but a lot. But they typically have a little bit more strict set of rules than just your regular hunting regulations for the state. This particular refuge, I haven't actually hunted this in a few years, but they have two different, they've got a waterfowl unit, and then they've got kind of an archery unit. Actually, they've got more units than that. But so this area right here is for waterfowl hunting. I think they have 2 days a week. They allow archery whitetail hunting. Other than that, waterfowling only. This area here, archery deer hunting only, no waterfowl hunting. This area here, no hunting at all. You can see that red hash mark there. It says no hunting. So it gives you an idea, you know, some places will have it just broken up into unit A, B, C, D. They'll have different species units. Everyone's a little bit different. And again, if you want to learn more information about, hey, what can I do on this refuge? Can I set up a tree stand? Can I set up a duck blind? Can I duck hunt at all? Can I deer hunt? Can I turkey hunt? What can I do? Click on it. It gives you this card here with all this information. If I scroll down to the hunting unit section here, I can click this button here. That'll take me to Fish and Wildlife Service's website, and it'll direct you to, all right, this is the Lee Metcalf National Wildlife Refuge. Here's the rules and regulations for what you can and can't do. Always make sure you double check that to make sure that you're abiding by the rules there. We're going to move on from land and access. There's a lot of cool stuff in here. Ducks Unlimited, Pheasants Forever, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, a lot of cool layers. But in the interest of time, we're going to move on to roads, trails, and rec. And this is one of the most, I sometimes almost take it for granted that everybody knows about this one, but I talk to people, I talk to friends that use onX, and a lot of people aren't aware that these layers are here. And especially if you're hunting The west are hunting areas with national forests. So that could be the southeast, that could be the upper Midwest, that could be a lot of places. You're going to want to turn some of these layers on. Trails and trail slope, I believe, are turned on by default.
Just trails
Just-
and recreation sites.
My mistake. Trails and recreation sites are turned on by default. I also turn on the trail slope and the trail mileages. And then the big one here that a lot of people don't know about is the motorized roads and trails. That's these purple lines here. Okay, so if I turn this off, you see those disappear. So those are, like the name said, roads open to motor vehicles, at least at a certain time of year. If I want to find out more information about this road, I click on it. It tells me the name of the road, tells me what it's accessible by. So overland, that's going to be like your pickup truck, your Jeep. High clearance 4x4, that's maybe a more built out Jeep or off-roading vehicle, and side by side. Some of these will say dirt bike because it's not wide enough for other vehicles, or it has a width restriction. Some will say dirt bike ATV because it has a 50-inch width restriction. So like your big, Polaris RZR or Can-Am is too wide for that trail. Your car certainly is. So double check and click on the road to make sure that your vehicle is appropriate and legal for that road or trail, and also to check the date. Let's say I was looking at this spot and I said, man, I want to go out there hunting this weekend. I can go hunt it, but if you look at the dates, it closed a few days ago. So in Montana, especially in some other Western states, we close our motorized roads, not all of them. We close some of them seasonally, a lot of times to coincide with hunting seasons. I mentioned earlier, our rifle season is opening up. Youth hunt started today. General for everyone else starts on Saturday. So they close some of these roads just to kind of give animals a little bit more of a sanctuary to have a place to go once the Orange Army heads to the mountains. And it's kind of nice because that's what allows us to have a pretty long general season in Montana. So like I said, some roads will close when archery season starts in Montana. Another set will close when rifle season starts. A bunch of them will close like the day after rifle season. They close them down for the winter, for the winter range of elk especially, and deer and other animals. And then they'll open them up on a certain date in the spring. Some will open in April, some will open in May, some won't open until June. So I've been caught by that before where I had an area, it was a spring bear hunt. I'm like, oh, I hunted this area in the fall. It looks good for spring bear. I drove up there, gate was closed because I didn't check the date beforehand. So double check those. That's a layer, like I said, I always have turned on. To give you a sense of what the trails and trail slope look like, I'm going to go up to the M Trail in Missoula here. So not a place I would hunt, but you can see all these different colors on these trails here on Mount Sentinel. If I turn off the trail slope, you see that goes away. So what the trail slope is giving you is kind of the relative steepness of the trail. Green is flat, red is steep, orange and yellow, kind of that gradient going down. So that's something I turn on just to be able to know, this trail's pretty steep or this trail's pretty flat. Trail mileage is going to give you the mileage for a segment of a trail. I don't know if you can see this little 0.2 miles from this point to this point here. So another good way to estimate distance there. I think I'm forgetting on that stuff.
Just jumping back in there quick, because these are other ones that often we get reached out about. Be the roadless areas and the forest visitors map.
Yep.
These are really great layers for specific purposes. That roadless areas is going to show you chunks of area or chunks of ground that have no roads in them. So like that chunk, there's nothing in there.
Yeah, it's wilderness area. So that's the roadless area. And this is, if you've used the roadless areas layer before, this looks a little different. We recently updated the style to try to make it a little bit more useful for you. The other one people commonly turn on is this one, right?
Yep.
So this is the forest visitor map. And we sometimes will get people be like, man, I can't get satellite imagery no matter what I do. It looks like a paper topo map. It's the forest visitor map that's turned on. Yeah, and this is a layer I personally don't use all that often. There is some information in there, that doesn't translate over to our base map. So some of the rec sites and some of the landmark names and things like that are listed in there.
It's good for old roads too, that aren't
Yep.
managed by the Forest Service anymore. Finding those old road beds for easy hiking, I'll often switch that layer on just to see if they're there and then switch it right back off and take off on my hunt.
Yeah, so again, if your map's not looking like you think it should, first thing to check is your map layers and see what you might have turned on that you don't want. How are we doing on time?
6 o'clock.
Whew, 6 o'clock already. We gotta speed up. Last layer collection I want to talk about is our trees, crops, and cover. One that I always have turned on is my timber cuts layer. Now this is showing logging activity on national forest. That's where we get some confusion sometimes. Some people say, hey, I know this area was logged, but it's not showing up in timber cuts. If it's state land or county land or private, the Forest Service doesn't manage that, so it's not included in this data set that we get from the Forest Service. So let me find an area. I think there was some logging up here, wasn't there? You know, if I was smarter, I would put a waypoint on one. Here we go. So it's a little tough to see right now on my map through the zoom, but this is an area that was logged in 2016. If I click on it, it tells me the name of the cut, when it occurred, what type it was. So it could be a clear cut, it could be an improvement cut, it could be a selective harvest, it could be a fuel reduction cut. I don't know if I've seen anything else listed there.
That's pretty much the only ones I've seen.
Those seem to be kind of the four most common. So again, national forest land, showing you where those logged areas are. I use that all the time. It's great for elk hunting, for bear hunting, for grouse hunting. Creates that edge habitat. You get some fresh new growth. I mentioned earlier the historic wildfire. So after a fire is put out and the data is kind of aggregated, it goes into our historic wildfire layer. Here's fire that took place in 2017 south of town here, the Low Peak fire. We go back 12 years on the fire data. So, well, this is another tip while I'm here. If you're wondering what a layer is showing or a little bit more about the information, you can click on this details tab here and it'll tell you a little bit more information there. Again, I can click on this fire. It tells me the name of it, the acreage, when it started. And if I zoom out, you can see they're different colors. So they'll start out more reddish or orange. And then as time goes by, they get lighter colored. So they go to yellow, they go to this kind of tannish color so that you can easily tell the older burned areas from the newer burned areas. So if you're looking to go hunt morel mushrooms in the spring, you know, look for those places that burned a year, 2, 3 years prior. I'm probably not going to go to a spot. Now, I'm not an expert mushroom hunter, but if it burned in 2013, might be a little bit past prime mushroom picking season in that area there. And then a couple more layer kind of groups I want to touch on. Let me get to the Midwest. I'm going to take a drink of water because my throat is getting scratchy. I'm going to get to the Midwest to show you the crop distribution. So we'll go to southern Minnesota here, south central-ish, and I'm going to turn on crop distribution. Got two colors there, basically, predominantly. If I hover my cursor over the map, it's going to tell me what was planted in this area last year. Southern Minnesota, I'm sure Iowa's similar, Wisconsin, a lot of corn and soybeans. Now, this is, again, 2022 data. We get this data from our source in February or March of every year. So this coming February, this coming March, we'll get the 2023 data because they're kind of aggregating it throughout the spring and or summer and fall, and then they send that to us. So where this is useful is if you know the crop rotation in your area. These areas that are soybeans, if they were soybeans in 2022, it's not a guarantee, but a better than average chance it's going to be corn this year. That's the typical rotation, corn, soybeans, corn, soybeans. Out here in Western Montana, we don't really have corn and soybeans, but we've got alfalfa and hay. If a field was alfalfa last year, pretty good chance it's going to be alfalfa again this year. So you can kind of get a sense of, hey, I want to go hunt Hungarian partridge. Let's look for a place where wheat or barley is planted because they like those small grains. If I'm looking for an area that has potatoes or sugar beets or any of the other 19 crops that we have, you can go in there and find it. So you can turn these off and on. If you just want to see soybeans, I can turn corn off. You know, in an area in the north, we don't really have a whole lot of peanuts. So you might just leave that one turned off. I typically just turn the whole layer collection off and on at once instead of doing individual layers. But if you just want to highlight one certain crop, you can certainly do that. In a similar fashion, we have some tree species data. I'm going to get up to northern Minnesota here to highlight a couple of these. Get to a forested area. So we've got a bunch here. Don't have time to show them all. I did have somebody ask, hey, I'm getting into grouse hunting. What are some tips you have? My number one tip, if you're hunting, especially the upper Midwest, or some areas of the Northeast, is this young aspen forest. Turn that layer on, and it's going to show you aspen stands that are 15 years old or less, meaning typically they've been logged within 15 years. That's where grouse and woodcock, especially like that younger aspen growth, they're going to be in those areas more heavily than a 20-year-old, 25-year-old aspen stand, something like that. For the rest of the country, the coniferous and deciduous distribution is good. I can turn that on and I can see, you know, as you might expect, some aspen birch in here, elm, ash, cottonwood. Let me get up farther north here where I know there's some conifers. And I'm going to make sure I have all of mine turned on. I do. So if I zoom in to this area, fir, hemlock, spruce. And what this is showing, if I zoom in here, you can really start to see a lot of different colors. Each one of these little boxes is 30 by 30 meters, and it's showing you the dominant tree species in that area. Does that mean that this area is only aspen birch? I would bet money on it that it's not. That's just the dominant species there. There might be maples in there, there might be pine trees, there might be oaks, there might be basswood, whatever. So they take this and the crop data, this is another question we get, is taken through aerial spectrometry, meaning a super fancy camera. They fly over and they're able to tell by the color of the vegetation what is growing there, what the tree species are, what the crops are. So those are some ones I turn on, especially like deer scouting. Man, I can easily find those habitat edges where I can see this is going from aspen birch to fir, hemlock, spruce. There's some habitat change there. Another very popular one is this acorn producing oaks. When I turn that on, not a whole lot of acorn producing oaks in northern Minnesota. But what that is showing you, if you're a deer hunter especially, right, they love acorns. You can turn that on, and what that's going to show you is oak trees that are capable of producing acorns. Now, if you hunt long enough, you realize not every tree gives off acorns every year. Some of them go in cycles. I think some of them are like a 3-year cycle. Some of them are maybe a 2-year cycle. Either way, you're going to have trees that 1 year it's a bumper crop, 1 year it's not. We have no way of knowing what is dropping acorns at a given moment. It's just showing you those trees that are mature enough to produce an acorn crop, because most oak trees don't do it until they're a certain age. Last one to show here is the wetlands layer. I turn that on. It's going to tell me whether it's herbaceous wetlands, so think more cattail marsh or slough, or more woody wetland. Up in this country, there's a lot of tamarack swamps, might be a cedar swamp, so you can get a look at that. Whether you're a duck hunter, whether you're a deer hunter, you have it. What have you? That's the word phrase I was looking for. We spent a lot of time on layers.
We did.
What did I forget?
That's pretty much it. The one we didn't cover would just be our wildlife layers.
Yep.
They're a really great research tool. If you are looking for different areas to hunt, there's a lot of Boone and Crockett records in there. Not something I would traditionally leave on at all times, though. Same as how your account's set up, those are almost always off on mine.
Yeah, this would be something I might use. Again, if I'm applying for a different state, I live in Montana, but I apply in some other states. When I'm applying for limited entry tags, I might want to turn on, see where the elk, the biggest elk, have been killed in the last 10 years per the Boone and Crockett record book, something like that. Otherwise, like Connor said, I turn them off. All right, I'm going to switch back to my tablet here so that I can show you offline maps. Another one of those areas a lot of people talk to us about. Let me go in here and start sharing again. So one of the top questions we get from people is, I don't have service where I hunt. How can I use onX? We don't have service where we hunt most of the time either. So we've built what we call offline maps. Let me just zoom out here, and I'm just going to go to a different area of the state. There we go. So while that's pulling up on your end, wow, there's a lot of lag on an iPad when they're going through Zoom. It's normal for me, but then you go through Zoom and it slows it down. Let's say I want to hunt this general area. In the lower left-hand corner along my kind of toolbar there, I tap on offline maps and I get this screen. So what this is showing is those green dots down below, we'll get to in a minute. Those are previously saved maps. You've never saved one, you're not going to have that, but you are going to have this button that says new map. Tap that, and whatever is shown within that red box is going to be downloaded to your phone for offline use, so that you're going to be able to pull it up when you're out there and you don't have service. You have a few different options for the size of the map and the resolution. I typically use the medium maps 9 times out of 10. If I'm hunting a real small area, I might go to high. You can see how much smaller that map is. It's only going to be about 8 miles wide. Our medium ones are going to be about 20. And the low resolution are going to be quite large, 100 miles wide. So what I use this low resolution for is I will save basically the whole state of Montana in a low resolution map. It's not going to have as crisp of imagery when you zoom in as the other maps do. Why I save these is as a backup. Let's say I'm going to hunt an area and I have my small map saved, and for whatever reason, we're not going to end up hunting that region. Maybe we go there and there's a lot of people. Maybe the roads are impassable. There's a bunch of rain. Maybe we're just not finding any animals. We're going to go somewhere else. At least if I have this bigger map saved, I have the private and public lands. I've got the roads. I've got the hunting districts. I've got all that information. I just don't have a crisp base map, that imagery there. So what I do most of the time is I'll save these medium maps. And so I'm going to go in here. I always recommend naming your maps. I'm going to name this one, just for right now, Northwest Montana. And then I'm going to hit save. Now I can see that map downloading there along the bottom. It should take anywhere from a few seconds to a minute or two. And now I have this green box on my map. That is the outline of that offline map. So if I want to hunt a bigger area than this, I can just go in and save the map. Or save a new map, I should say. I can line that up with the boundary from the map that is currently saving and hit save. So I have this kind of all over the areas of Montana that I hunt, is I'll make a grid pattern with these different maps, so that when I'm out there, it's a higher detailed map. It's got better imagery on it, but I still have that coverage. Okay. And when you're out there in the field, you don't have to, we sometimes are like, man, how do I switch from map to map to map? You don't have to do that. You don't have to like select, all right, now this map, now that map. It's automatically going to load up all the offline maps you have saved. Most of the time, if I'm in an area without cell service, I put my phone into airplane mode. That's another question we get is, man, how do I extend my battery life? The best thing you can do to expand your battery life, put your phone into airplane mode. That's going to save it from trying to connect to the cell tower and drawing your battery down. If it's cold, like it's about to be here in Montana, a cold battery doesn't last as long, put it in an inside pocket, put it in, I see, I think it's FHF makes like a pouch you can put your phone in, and then it's got a spot for one of those like hot hands, hand warmers. That looks pretty sweet that I might try. And then the other thing that draws your battery is your screen life or your screen time. So obviously you got to look at the map once in a while. I try to look at the map, get a sense of what I'm doing, where I'm going, then turn that off just so it's not draining the battery. I carry a battery pack with me pretty much all the time. One of those external power banks, you can get them. I see them in gas stations, department stores, online. Mophie makes a good one, Otterbox, Dark Energy. There's a lot of different brands that make them. They're all pretty good in my experience. So carry one of those just in case, even if you're day hunting. I have a real small one that gets me one charge. Don't know what's in my pack, and then I've got a backup at least for saving that battery life. So my 2 maps that I've just downloaded are saved here now. You can see they have that bright green outline. You might look at your map and see something like this, where it's got kind of a red and white, almost looks like a barber pole or a candy cane outline. What that is showing is a map that was saved to your account, but is not currently on that device. So you can have, a phone and a tablet, and you can access onX on both of them. But if I save an offline map on my tablet, it doesn't automatically show up on my phone. It'll show up like this. And I'm going to have, if you see those 2 maps in the middle there on the menu, they have an arrow pointing down. That means maps downloaded on another device, or I previously had it on this one and I offloaded it. Either way, to get it on this device, I'm going to tap that down arrow and it's going to start downloading that map.
If you make maps on the computer as well, they'll show up
Yep.
on your phone like that. That's often how I make mine. I tend to move a little bit quicker on the
I
computer.
do the same.
So I'll go and save all my chunks, build out the area I plan on going. And then once I'm on my phone before I'm leaving for the hunt, download them all on there quick and you're ready to go.
And I just offloaded a bunch from my phone. My phone's getting low on storage. I've got a handful of areas where I had maps saved, different elk hunting areas, whatever. I filled my elk tag this year. I had to bring that up. You did too.
Yeah, we both did.
Look at us.
Look at us. Fantastic.
So I'm not going to be elk hunting this year. So I offloaded those areas just to open up some space because I went and downloaded my South Dakota areas. So you can offload them, onload them, whatever you want to do. Just make sure you have them saved before you go out and
Do you
before
want
the
to
service.
Do you quickly want to show how to either remove it from the device or delete the map?
Certainly. So to remove a map from the device where I might need it next year, but for right now I don't, I'm going to tap those ellipses, those 3 dots on the right, and I'm going to hit remove from device. So that removes all the downloaded data, but it saves that outline. So that next year when I'm going to go to this area, if I want to download it again, I don't have to go through all the steps of hitting new map, getting the boundary set. I can just hit that download button again. If I want to delete it entirely, tap on those ellipses, hit delete. Now it's gone. You see that outline went away.
That last option you had there for edit, it doesn't allow you to move where the map is located. But if you do want to name them after the fact, so you were in a rush saving them, weren't giving them names, you can go back and click edit later, be able to add that name in. So that way they're a bit more organized. I know same as you, like my antelope area, I've only got them downloaded while I'm out there because I have just huge areas saved.
Yep.
As soon as I'm done with that trip for the year, remove them from the device, but leave them on my account. Catch them next year if I draw the tag.
And you'll notice I gave myself a reminder there. Name your maps. Because if you don't, then it's all going to say map 8/22/23/1849. I don't know where that is. So it's a good idea. I do mine based on either what I'm hunting or where I'm hunting. I went sage grouse hunting this year. I had a whole bunch of maps saved for where we were sage grouse hunting. I just named them all sage grouse 23. Didn't get one, unfortunately, but we'll be back next year.
Yeah. I don't know if this is what we're jumping into next, but on the naming portion, waypoints is a huge one.
We'll get to waypoints in a second. One more thing on offline maps. You'll notice some of these say update available. To update, all I have to do is tap that green check mark, and that's going to start downloading that update. What that means is something has changed within the bounds of that box. Land ownership info has changed. Maybe a hunting district has changed. Something has changed there, right? If you're driving out and it's, Saturday morning and you're driving to the duck spot and you say, oh man, it says update available. Go hunting. Don't worry about it. Don't let that keep you from going out there. Your map is still going to work. It's not like we shut it off because you haven't updated it. Just means something in that map is out of date. Like I said, typically it's most commonly private land ownership has changed hands.
And you'll see that update available quite often.
Yeah.
And we're always changing data on our map. So each week they might say that.
Yeah.
If you've done it recently or done it that season, you are probably good. Maps are still going to be fine.
I typically will, Friday, I'm sitting here at work. I'll just pull my phone up, update all the maps for the areas I'm gonna go that weekend and let them download. And then I don't think about it for another week or, I hunt probably more than most. You maybe don't need to do it that often. When you think of it, when you got time, go ahead and update them. If not, it's not the end of the world. Just good practice to do every once in a while. All right. Offline maps covered. Now let's get to waypoints, shall we?
Let's do it.
So there are a number of different map tools you can use to mark up your map. In the center of my map, along the bottom, there's a button that says tools. If you're watching this and you're following along on your computer, it's going to be in the upper right-hand corner. I guess that's reversed. Upper right. Isn't it backwards on TV?
It might be.
Anyway, my upper right is over here. Tap on that. That's going to give you your different tool options. Most commonly used tool in the map are waypoints. Waypoints let you mark a single spot on the map. You can see I got a bunch of them saved here from previous 101s and office hours classes. So I've got this one saved right here at the office. There's two ways to save a waypoint on a mobile device. So there's kind of three ways to do that. In this menu, there are two ways to do that. I can hit mark my location, and that's going to put a waypoint where you are standing. I use that when I'm out in the field quite often, especially if, I flush a pheasant and I want to mark this spot for later, hit that, and then I will go in and I will edit my waypoint. So again, you're going to have a menu like this. After you hit mark my location, a menu like this will pop up. Or if you have an existing waypoint on your map, all you have to do is tap on it or click on it, and you'll get this menu. I'm going to tap on edit. I'm going to rename it. Again, always rename your waypoints if you can. The generic date and time aren't going to be helpful to you a year from now if you don't change anything. I went through a while back and got rid of all of my waypoints that had just the standard name that's put in there by default and the red X, because I have no idea what it means. After the fact, you're in the thick of the hunt, there's birds flying or there's an elk bugling. You're going to be like, I'll go back later and I'll fill that in. You might, or you're like me and you don't. And then a couple of weeks later, even like, man, I don't know what that was. So let's pretend this was a pheasant flush. I'm gonna scroll through our 90 different icons.
I think it's right about 90.
Something like that. I'm going to pick the pheasant one. You can pick whatever you want. I'm going to change the color of it. I personally color code my waypoints by species. Everybody does it a little bit differently. There's no real right or wrong way. The only wrong way would be to do nothing. So I do mine by species. So let's just say all my pheasant spots are yellow. My deer spots are green. My bear spots are blue because I like alliteration. Whatever makes sense to you, go with it. I have some, all of my parking areas or places where I put the truck, I make white because that's kind of species agnostic. I might be parking there to deer hunt. I might be parking there to duck hunt. I might be parking there to grouse hunt. And then, so have whatever color coding system you want. A lot of people do it by year, where they'll say, all right, in 2020, everything was red. 2021, everything was blue. 2022, everything is brown. Whatever makes sense to you. Once you pick a system and start using it, it's going to become second nature. I do all mine by color. And so right now, when I see yellow, I know like, oh, those are pheasant spots. I don't even have to look at the icon. I see brown, I'm like, that's my elk stuff. So whatever works for you. You can add a picture to your waypoints if you want. I don't have one on this device to add, but you can hit photos and then you can either just take a picture and have it uploaded or have one you've previously taken. I love doing this for animals I kill, really.
Yep.
You know, spots where I've gotten a deer, gotten a bear, whatever. And then later on, it's kind of like a journal. I like to go back and look at them. It's kind of fun. Sometimes I'll have, especially for like my grouse spots and duck spots, I'll have ones that I didn't even remember putting the picture on there. And I'll tap on them and be like, oh yeah, I remember that day. Just kind of a cool way to relive it. I've also done it for tree stands so that when you're walking on the trail, like in the dark, I'll take a picture so that I know what it looks like, because it might look totally different than when we set the stand up. Say I was deer hunting with Connor and wanted to send him into a stand. I can send that waypoint to him. Then he's got the picture. He's got that information. So let's talk about what that looks like, actually. I'm going to name this one Blush.
Well, he's doing that notes section in there as well.
Right.
I use that a ton, and it might feel silly, but I often am leaving pretty extensive notes on points I'm making throughout hunting season. And it's helped me immensely in like the next year or 2 years down the road. I can click back on that waypoint. I don't have to remember what I was thinking at the time, just off the name and icon I gave it. I can leave my notes in there about what was special about that spot or why I actually wanted that mark to be there.
Yeah, so I do the same thing. That's a good point. So let's say flush 3 roosters, 10, 19, 23. Sweet. Next year I can click on this and be like, oh yeah, that's a good spot to go. Let's say I wanted to send this spot to Connor. He's going to go hunting by himself, or I want him to meet me here, whatever. I can hit this share button along the bottom of the menu. Hit share once again. And then it's going to tell you, if I share this with Connor, he can't change it. He can't delete it. He can't share it with anybody else. So there's some protection there from your spots getting blown out. And then when I hit share again, it's going to pull up my different options for sharing. This is a tablet, so there's no text message option. That's the most common way people share, but you can email it. You can share it through Facebook, Instagram, kind of whatever messaging platform you want. Again, most people text them. And then I'm able to just send him a link. It'll show up on his phone. He'll click on that. It will open up onX on his phone and ask if he wants to place that waypoint there. He can say yes or no. If he doesn't have onX, I can still share it to him. So let's say you're going out, you're hunting by yourself, and you want to just let somebody back at home know where you're going to be hunting, just for safety purposes or something. They don't have to have onX or have an account to receive a share. So I could share it with Connor. If he doesn't have onX, when he clicks that link, it's going to take him to the App Store to download the app. So he'll have to go through the process to set up his account, of course. He can set up a free account, and then he's able to receive that share and have it on the map there. So that's something we hear from people like, hey, my spouse just kind of wants to know where I'm going. We don't want to pay for 2 memberships. Have them download the free one and then send them, hey, this is where I'm parking. If you don't hear from me by 9 o'clock, whatever, you know, send for help or something like that.
And I don't know if we'll cover this in this one, but you can share multiple waypoints at once.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got let's say a hunting property and there's a trail that you've built going into a stand, the location of that stand and a location where you want somebody to park, you can grab all 3 of those things at one time and share them with just one link. And that way, when your hunting buddy gets it, clicks on the link, his account gives him that whole story of what he needs to be looking at.
Yeah. So, and you can share, like Connor said, you can share waypoints, you can share tracks, you can share lines. Any of the markups can be shared. So I really like that, you know, that example of a deer stand of here's the track in, you know, so that you're not walking through the bedding area or you're not blowing them out because of the wind or whatever. Here's the stand. Here's the way I want you to leave. I've shared blood trails before where I'm blood trailing an animal and my brother's coming over to help me. I'll be like, hey, here's where I started. Follow this. You'll get to me eventually or something like that. Really no limit to the different examples of why you might share something. One more thing I want to mention, actually 2 more things on waypoints. We have a couple kind of advanced tools. Now this is maybe getting a bit out of a 101 to like a 201 level. But a couple of cool things here. You can set the wind direction on a waypoint. So you can have it show you what the wind is doing at a given location. Again, for a deer stand, duck blind, great idea to mark what the wind is doing to help you decide where to go. You can have it show the current wind, which is what I'm going to do right now. And it's telling me on this waypoint, that's at the strip mall across the street, 2 miles an hour out of the west. It's a question we get to. It means wind's blowing from the west to the east. So that's kind of handy if you just want to see at a glance what the wind is doing at a location. I do this for fields that I hunt or areas I hunt with my dog for upland hunting, because to me, it doesn't really matter what direction the wind's blowing. I'm still going to hunt that area. I might just start at a different part so that I can start with my dog's nose into the wind or quartering or something. If this was a tree stand where I'm going to archery deer hunt, I'm probably going to have it set to optimal wind. Now this lets me choose, to mark the best wind for this stand or this duck blind or whatever. Let's say I only want to hunt it on north winds. I just tap. That's all I'm doing here is tapping on those different pie segments and hitting apply. Now, when I look at the map, it's telling me it's a west wind. It's highlighted yellow, which means it's an okay wind, right? If it were out of the south, it would be red. If it were out of the north, it would be green. And what's really powerful about this is if you start marking a bunch of your waypoints, if I go back into my tools, I can go to the wind calendar. It's on the bottom row here. I tap on that, and then that's going to show me all of my waypoints that I have marked an optimal wind for. And it's going to give me kind of a forecast. So if I click along the top, you have your different dates. I can select a date. Let's say I'm going out hunting Sunday. Let's say Sunday morning. I'm going to go out hunt. I can immediately tell at a glance, half of these locations are not going to be good winds because I can see all the reds and the yellows. I can easily tell, all right, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spots to choose from. Kind of helps take out some of that paralysis analysis. You might have, oh man, I don't know where to hunt. This is one tool you can use to say, all right, well, these stands have the best wind. Now let's decide between them. And I might take this one that says glassing spot A because it's a good wind all throughout the day. Some of the other ones are not, and I can tell, all right, this stand's going to be good in the morning. Then sometime I'm going to have to change to a different one around midday because the wind is changing. So that's the wind calendar. It's also available on your web map. You can go into the toolbar there. It's available there as well. A couple other quick tools to talk about. I mentioned there was 2 ways to mark a waypoint from this menu. We did mark my location. The other way is add waypoint. You can see if I tap that, it just puts a waypoint in the center of my screen. If that's not where I want it, I can just tap the map. You can see that it is moving. I recommend zooming in so you can get it precisely where you want it. And then, of course, I'm not going to do it right now, but change the color, change the icon, change the name, hit save, and there it is for you. The last way to mark a waypoint, and Connor was the one that reminded me of this on our last 101, is if I just tap the map, you can't really see here, but if I just tap and hold my finger down for, I think it's 2 seconds, 1 second, it's going to place a waypoint on the map there. So that's another nice way if I'm like, man, I want to mark this spot and it's not where I am currently. Hold your finger down, and then that's going to place the waypoint there. I can also go ahead and just cancel out if I don't want to save it. If it was an accidental long press, I can just hit cancel and get rid of it there.
And coming from the customer service side of things, if you're on an Android, that cancel button may not be working as it's supposed to at the moment. Fix is coming for that later this week and early next week. So if you're running into that, don't worry about it. Your app will update by the end of next week and that'll be back to normal.
Yeah, bit of a bug there right now. Otherwise, you just have to hit save and then go in and delete it, right?
Yep, that would be the workaround for now, is to just save it and then delete it.
Perfect. All right, quickly, we're going to talk about a couple more tools here. The area shape tool lets you highlight an area. So when I went into the area shape there, I have a crosshair on my map, and then this button kind of above where it says area 1019, it says drop point. I'm going to hit drop point. I'm gonna move my map. I'm gonna drop another point, move it again, and let's do a poorly drawn rectangle. There we are. It's a quadrangle, right? It's not perfectly.
I don't know if that's what it would be called, but
I
if
know
you
what's a
wanna call
I know it's a polygon. That just covers everything. So I've got this area shape here. I can change the color of it. I can change the outline. Sometimes we have people who don't want the inside to be a color. You can hit this no fill option here. Whatever floats your boat. I'm gonna hit save. Area shape tool's cool. People will use them to mark out prescribed burn areas so that they can have, you know, this area was burned this year, this area was burned 2 years ago. People use them for food plots quite often, where you can mark, you know, I got 6 different food plots and I'm going to color code them. These 2 are brassicas. These 3 are soybeans. I don't plant food plots. I'm out of my element here.
Yeah,
You
gives
can
you
do it by different species, whatever you're
for the
doing.
food plot guys, gives you your acreage, makes it way
Yep.
easier to buy seed and fertilizer if you know exactly how much you're gonna end up actually needing.
Yep.
That's how we used them in Iowa a ton.
Yeah, super nice to be able to just highlight it and say, this one's 1.3 acres. I know how much seed I need to buy and all fertilizer, etc.
And I had seen a question pop in, I think it was from Jeff, that kind of was good to touch on here too, about
Mhm.
waypoints on offline maps.
Ooh, good question.
Those are totally separate things on your account. The offline map is saving the map data. So like satellite imagery and the ownership and all of that type of stuff. Your waypoints are living on top of that information. So they don't necessarily need to be saved to the offline map. They're going to be there when you get out to the field and still show up on your account. And you can still create all of these while you are offline.
Mhm.
Once you get back into service, they'll sync up with our side of things and start showing up on your other devices as well.
Yeah, yeah. So if you're out in an area and you don't have an offline map saved and you still want to save a waypoint, you can do that.
Yep.
You're not going to have any imagery, but I've done that when I've been driving. Be like, man, there's a whole herd of elk there. I wonder if it's public. It's not. It never is. But I still was able to go back and check, right? I'm like, oh, this is very much a ranch. That's why there's all these bulls here in the middle of hunting season. It happens. All right, moving on to the tracker. This is something that I think everybody should use, at least at some point while they're using onX. Lower right-hand corner, tap the tracker button. If you're not finding this on your computer, it's because it's not there, because you're probably not walking around with your laptop or your desktop out in the woods. So if you're looking for it there, you're not going to find it. All you have to do, I'm just going to get back to my location here. Tracker, hit start. And that's going to start counting down the time, the mileage, the speed. My blue dot turns red. And then if I were moving, you would see a breadcrumb trail everywhere I was walking or driving or flying. People have done it in planes too. So this is, you know, first and foremost, I think of this as like a safety feature. If I'm going to an area I don't know very well, or even if it's an area I do, I'm going to park the truck. I'm going to mark a waypoint at the truck or at camp or the boat launch or whatever. And then I'm going to start my tracker. And I'm going to hike into my deer stand. I'm going to hike into my glassing point, wherever I'm going. And I'm going to have that trail all the way in there. So that's useful for at the end of the day. You know, of course, I need to get back. I have that trail that I walked in on. Maybe I'm going to walk that exact trail back. Maybe I'm not. Right? Maybe I went through a whole bunch of deadfall and I want to find a better way out. At least I know where not to go. You can do this for, you know, Connor used the example of a deer stand earlier. I might do this for every deer stand that we have. Here's where I park the four-wheeler, hike in so that I have all of those trails for in the dark. Things look different. Might be, you know, going through the thick woods if you don't want to hang flagging tape or mark the trail or something, or you're just not able to. At least you have that. I do it for blood trailing everything.
Oh yeah.
Always have the blood trail saved there. I do this when I'm like, if I'm pheasant hunting a field, I want to make sure I cover every little piece, make sure I'm walking the whole thing. What else would you use a tracker for? There's a lot of stuff.
That's pretty much it. Outside of hunting, I tend to run them when I'm just on hikes and stuff too. It's a
Yep.
nice way to see the mileage you're doing. Then the app is designed for hunting, but there's so many other purposes
Mhm.
where it can be applicable to use it as well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sometimes you just want to brag to your friends and be like, man, I did 12 miles today. You know, that's pretty good. So that tracker there, if you forget to stop your tracker when you get back to your vehicle and you're driving home and the tracker's been on the whole time, there is an option to trim that track. That was something, I think enough of us at the office made that mistake. One of our engineers at the time said, I'm just going to build a tool to fix this. So if you have a track, I don't have one saved on this test device, unfortunately, but if you have a track and you're driving down the road and you're like, shoot, I forgot to turn it off. Hit the stop button on the track, go ahead and save it. Just drive home. Don't do this while you're driving. But once you get back, you can go tap on that track and it'll pull up that menu like we've seen a few times tonight. And on tracks, there'll be a little button along the bottom that says trim track. You can go in there and you can trim. You can't trim the middle. You can trim from one end. You can trim from the other. So most commonly, you got in the truck, you're driving back and it's leading you down the highway back home or something. You can trim all that off back to where you parked, for example. And that trim is permanent. So make sure when you trim a track that you are happy with where it's at before you hit the save button. Another question we get is if you do accidentally delete something, can we bring it back? If you delete waypoints, if you delete a whole track, if you delete an area shape and it was by mistake, give us an email or shoot us an email, help@onxmaps.com. We can restore those for you on our end. We'll get that taken care of. But again, if you trim the track too much, that's something we can't restore. We can restore the whole thing or nothing, basically. All right, last thing I want to show before we get to some Q&A. We're already at over an hour and a half. Last thing I want to talk about is the search function within the app. So on your web map, this is going to kind of be in the top left corner. If you have your map layers menu open, you're going to need to close it and you'll see the search bar there. On a mobile device, it's in the upper right-hand corner here. It looks like a magnifying glass. I tap on that and I get the search option here. There's two different kind of methods of search. You can search for a location. So that would be an address, a town, a county, a landmark, or coordinates. If you have GPS coordinates, you can type them in here. So we give you some examples of what to type. For searching for coordinates, I'm just going to select this example. And then you see I have some options that show up. Tap on one of those. And it's going to bring me to that spot. Okay, I have my dot there. And then if I wanted to, I could place a waypoint on that location. We sometimes have people say, hey, can I just place a waypoint with a set of coordinates? That's how you do it. Type the coordinates in there, pull up that area on the map, and then place the waypoint. I did see a question earlier. Somebody asked, hey, how do I type in coordinates? It's always putting me in a different country. Highly recommend you do it in decimal format like you see here. And so your first coordinate, your first set, that's going to be your north-south. Your latitude, probably going to be like where we are, 46 north, depending where you are. It shouldn't be, if you're in North America, I suppose you could go all the way up to 90. But if you're at like 5, you're probably too far south. The second coordinate's what gives people trouble. In the Western Hemisphere, it has to be a negative number because we're west of the prime meridian. If I would have typed in 113 instead of negative 113, that would have put me in like Eastern Europe or something like that, or Russia or China, Eastern Hemisphere. Okay, so if you're getting taken to a totally different part of the world, something's goofed up with the coordinates. You might have typed something in wrong, or if you forgot the negative or something like that. If you put the first number negative, that's going to put you in the Southern Hemisphere. So don't do that. Other things you can search for. I could search for Yellowstone National Park if I wanted. Just type in Yellowstone. More information you can give it, the better. If I could spell national would help. Yellowstone National Park. Boom, there we are. Awesome. The other thing you can search for is private land. So you can do this, if I delete this. The more information you can give the search, the better. So if I'm searching for somebody whose last name is Smith, and I hit search, there's a lot, right? It's only going to give you the top 50 results here. So let's say I want to look for Andrew Smith, just making up a name. it's gonna make it a little bit more exact. And you'll notice the options will be dependent on where the map is located. So it's going to prioritize search results that are closest to where you are looking. So if I'm looking for somebody in Ketchum, Idaho, I don't know exactly where they are, but I know they're around Ketchum. I'm going to zoom the map in there and then search. That's going to give me more likely results. It's going to give me more results in Idaho versus if my map was in Florida, it's going to give me results for Andrew Smiths in Florida. So you don't have to know exactly where they are, of course, right? That's part of the reason you're searching is you're trying to find them. But if you have a general idea of where in the country, where in the state they are, as close as you can get the map before doing the search, that's going to give you better search results there. What am I forgetting on search?
That's pretty much it. You can filter by acreage too.
Yep.
If you know that it's like within 100 to 200 acres, you can narrow down the search with that. But going off the location is by far the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Get the map over that general area and then search. It's going to be one of those top couple of results as long as you're looking in the right area.
And if you're looking for a landowner that's, owns a farm or a ranch, you can just bump it up to 20 acres because a lot of the parcels are in town and it's 1/8 of an acre, 1/4 acre, 1 acre. So you can filter out a lot of them just by moving that minimum up a little bit. That's going to help you get better results there too. I think that's it.
That's pretty much it.
Let's get some Q&A. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to ask Eli to post the giveaway link in the chat. So we're giving away 10 onX orange hats. I will email the winners tomorrow morning. Usually I get to that around 9-10 o'clock Mountain Time. The giveaway is only open until midnight tonight. So make sure you answer. If you're watching this video on YouTube on the recording later, sorry, the giveaway is no longer open. Closes October 19th, 11:59 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. But we do giveaways just about every one of our master classes. So sign up for a future one and get you some free swag. Let me pull up our questions here. So we talked about entering coordinates. That was one I had there. Is there a way to get local weather at a specific spot versus from the nearest airport? So that was something we didn't demo. I can demo that real quick here, the weather. So you can do this on mobile or web. I'm just going to show you on web here. But if I click any area, this is in northern Minnesota. Click the area, click the weather tab. It's going to give me the weather for that area. Now this is pulling from the nearest weather station. Now we have tens of thousands of these across the country that we connect to. So there's no way to get it for a specific spot unless the weather station is on that spot. We have to pull from the nearest one. But to get the most exact weather for your hunting area, click on that and it'll connect to the nearest station, whether that's a mile away, 10 miles away, whatever, right? It'll connect to the nearest one. And then you can get the extended forecast as you scroll down. So this one will go all the way to November. Ooh, I'm going to be in northern Minnesota around that time. That's looking like okay deer hunting weather. Upper 30s.
Jealous.
Shouldn't be too bad. You can get the sunrise and sunset times. If I scroll up, I use that all the time on my phone. I'll just tap and I can pull that up to know when legal shooting light is. You can get precipitation, barometric pressure. You can get the moon phase for those who really geek out on that stuff when it's overhead and underfoot. You can get all that stuff. If I zoom down, I can get all the moon phases. I'm planning a hunt next month in December. I want to know when the full moon is. I can pull all that stuff up. It's a good question there on the weather. Best way to get the most accurate weather for a location is to tap on the map or click on it, and it's going to pull the closest weather station, the data from there.
To add on to that, our wind on waypoint is estimating at that location. They're using a wind model that takes into account like thermals and things like that. So that's going to be a lot more accurate estimate of what that wind should be at the location instead of looking at like a nearby weather station.
Here was a fun one that I thought would be fun to answer. How to get a deer out of the woods that is more than a mile from the road. My recommendation, if you're in a state where you can bring it out in parts, is to quarter it up and carry it out on your back. Get a frame pack, get a backpack where you can haul meat on. There's all kinds of videos. I prefer the gutless method, all kinds of videos on that. Go ahead and cut that sucker up and carry it out. If you're in an area, like I believe my home state of Minnesota, you said Iowa, I think
Yep.
Pennsylvania is this way. It's kind of a east of the Mississippi type of thing typically, where you have to bring the animal out whole and you can't start cutting it up like until it's registered, until you call it in or bring it to a registration station. If it's not a big deer, I've carried whole ones out on my pack. I am larger than average. That might not be an option for you. Some of those little plastic sleds are great, or one of those like game carts, those two-wheeled ones,
Yeah.
if you can.
I actually bought a harness too. It's basically just like backpack shoulder straps with a rope that you tie
Yep.
to it. Just
That's
drag it out.
huge. If you're, think about how much energy it takes if you're pulling a rope like this on your core to keep from twisting. If you can just have it on your back. I kind of did that last year. I don't know why I didn't quarter it up. I was just feeling lazy at the time, and then ended up being more work afterwards. But I drug a deer out 1.5 miles in Montana here. It was hard packed snow and mostly downhill. So once I got to the road, it was easy sledding, pun heavily intended. But I had my pack on, I tied the rope to the pack, and then I just walked because I was just dragging it. It was quick and easy.
Yep.
Again, I'm not going to do that this year because I probably should have just corded it up and carried it out. But sometimes you got to make mistakes. I would like to better understand how accurate the app is in various situations, trees, clouds, etc., anything that can impact GPS accuracy. So your GPS on your phone is going to be accurate typically to within like a couple feet of where you're standing. It does get a better signal if you're moving. Sometimes I'll be sitting there perfectly still and I'll notice my circle is moving around a little bit on the map. The GPS system has an easier time triangulating your position if you're moving versus if you're standing still. But even with that, I can't say I've ever been in such thick forest or thick cloud cover where it really affected it.
no, you shouldn't run into trouble with that unless you were like by like a rock face that's straight up. A lot of times what we'll see and where that starts to fall inaccurate is if you have any like power saving settings turned on your phone, especially with Androids. If you turn on like low power mode or anything like that, it can really inhibit the location accuracy and tracker especially as well. So if you are worrying about those things, turn off the low power mode and that'll usually help quite a bit with it.
Yep. And then the second part of the question was about accuracy of property lines. That's a good question, something we get all the time. So our property lines are as accurate as what we get from the county. So when we pull data from the local like county tax assessor's office, which is where we get most of our data, they'll give us like a margin for error. And I did that for a while at onX. That was my role at the time. And a lot of times counties would be like, these could be off by 50 feet, which was just, I think, them trying to cover themselves a little bit. Generally speaking, 5 to 10 feet is what we find as far as property lines. There's no way to be as accurate as a survey. So if you're trying to do this because you got a land dispute with your neighbor, get a survey. That's what's going to hold up in court. The technology just isn't there right now to have it be to the inch. Generally speaking, it'll get you close to a property line. If there's a fence there and you think you should be able to go 5 more feet, I would abide by the fence. There's not always a easy to tell line between private and public. I saw that when I was sage grouse hunting this year. We were walking, I looked at the map, I'm like, holy smokes. Like, we're really close to the private and there was no way to tell. It was just flat open sagebrush. A lot of the country, there's going to be hopefully signage or a fence or a change in vegetation or something there.
Yep. And always safe to trust fences and signage you see on the ground over the data that you see on the map.
Yep.
It can be wrong. It often isn't, but we do run into those situations and just better safe than sorry.
Yep. We didn't quite get to touch on trail cameras right now. That is a bit beyond the 101. I did want to mention 2 days ago, we did a trail camera integration masterclass. My buddy Jared here, who kind of is our resident whitetail guy, he went through, I think he spent 20 minutes, half an hour on how to set up trail cameras. So if you're wondering how the trail camera integration with onX works, that half hour of Jared showing you how to do that is going to be better than anything we can do here. So go to the onX Hunt YouTube channel. The masterclass video is titled Trail Camera Integration and In-Depth Whitetail Features. Take a look at that. Even if you're not a whitetail person, if you're interested in the trail cameras, watch the first portion of that. Wanted to mention that. Last question here, Apple CarPlay. If I got an Apple device and CarPlay in my vehicle, what do I need to do to set that up?
Yeah, so vehicle turned on, you'll need the cord for this. There are some wireless Apple CarPlay units out there, but it's not many of them yet. Plug the USB into the truck where it fits in, plug your phone into that, and then usually, like normal, your Apple CarPlay is going to appear, and there's going to be an option for the different apps that are compatible there. As long as everything's up to date and set up correctly, our app should just appear then on your dash. You'll click on it there, and that's going to bring up a mirrored image essentially of what you're seeing on your phone screen, and kind of in like that compass mode where you're centered on the map. It'll be centered on your location, showing the direction of travel. So what's on your left is on your left, and on your right is on your right.
Sweet. One day I'll have a vehicle that's new enough for that.
Oh, I definitely won't.
All right, so apologies if we couldn't get to your question today. We had a lot of them. Thanks everybody for sticking with us. I'm going to post that giveaway link one last time there. If you didn't get entered in. I also want to mention, if you're interested in other onX masterclasses that are coming up, you can go to the onX Hunt website. We have a whole page there with all the upcoming classes. We are going to take a little bit of a, not a hiatus, but we're going to slow down a little bit because most of us are going to be hunting for the next couple of weeks. So the schedule gets a little bit lighter. We've got an office hours next week. That's just kind of a free question and answer type session. We've got some other kind of cool deer hunting ones coming up after that. And then really we'll pick it back up after hunting season and keep rolling here. So thanks again. If you have any questions, help at onX Maps, shoot us an email. We'll take care of you there. And hope everybody has a good evening, and we'll catch you on the next one.